Europe's currency crisis. How to save the euro. Is what's happening in Europe with the euro a precursor to what will happen in the US? Whatever happens, it will hurt the US economy, and we should be ready to buckle our belts and weather the economic storm that is coming for a second time and learn from others' mistakes. How to save the euro. It requires Germany and other stable EU countries to rise to the challenge. Some banks may be able to raise money in the equity markets, but most vulnerable will need government help. Core countries like Germany and the Netherlands have enough cash to look after their own banks, but other governments may need Eurozone money. But the only way to stop the downward spiral now is a collective act by Eurozone governments to erect a financial measure to stave off the crisis and put the governments that are on the euro on a sounder footing. The cost will be large for the 17 countries of the Eurozone and EU's remaining 10. Is it just that important, or is the alternative far worse? A rescue must do four things. First, it must make clear which Europe governments are going to be solvent. Second, it has to shore up Europe's banks to ensure they can withstand a sovereign default. Third, it needs to shift from the policy of obsession with budget cutting towards an agenda for growth. And finally, it must start the process of designing a new system to stop such a mess from happening again. Sharp cutting budget deficits have been the priority, which cause tax rises and spending cuts. But this collectively has not worked in Europe, and a mere budget cutting does not deal with the real cause of the mess, which is a loss of credibility with people and their governments. Italy and Spain are under attack not because their finances have suddenly deteriorated, but because investors fret that they may be forced to default. There's been a major loss of confidence with investors and Europe's leaders because they have denied repeatedly that Greece is insolvent, when everybody knows that Greece is insolvent. Solution. Conditions for renewed growth have to comprise of four things: freeing up service and professions, privatizing more companies, getting government out, cutting bureaucracy, and fourth, delaying retirement just a few more years. Contagion. How to prevent one. A Greek default would threaten many banks, not just in Greece. This week, the markets took aim at French banks that hold Southern Europe debt. Moreover, solvent countries need a breathing space to push through reforms. That points to agreeing to two measures at the same time. Shore up the banks, which could take months, and which also has to be immediate, and create a firewall. A firewall. None of this will work unless the Europeans create a firewall around solvent governments. That means shoring up Eurozone sovereign debt. The ECB must declare that it stands behind all solvent countries' sovereign debts and that it is ready to use unlimited resources to ward off such panic. That is consistent with the ECB's goal to ensure price and financial stability for the Eurozone as a whole. The answer is to turn to the only institution that can credibly counter a collective loss of confidence on such a scale. This would be the ECB, European Central Bank, and the Euro system. Even so, this is a huge step. The ECB, which is typically independent and holds unelected positions, could become embroiled in political decisions, especially by declaring a state insolvent and having to cut it off. This would create a lot of havoc. So the euro. The European states complained that euro is not what they were promised when the euro was set up. But is it worth saving? Or would it be cheaper, basically, to look at it and break it up? And are there longer-term political costs of redesigning Europe to save the euro too great? These are good questions that we need to know. Now, getting into Europe has proven to be easier than getting out. And part of the problem is that there could be a run on the banks as depositors withdrew euros before they were devalued. This would cause a major problem and a major loss in confidence. Two risks flow from this. Germans will demand that Greece is thrown out of the euro to frighten the other countries that are rogue financially. And the longer-term risk has to do with more Europe. Fans of political integration say that the way to enforce discipline is to create a United States of Europe. Perhaps a fiscal union would supervise the issuance of common Eurobonds. Why is this important? Well, what's happened in Europe could happen here. And two, we can see what more regulation, higher taxes, larger governments, and spending has done to other economies. And three, whatever happens, it will hurt the U.S. economy because of how the trade is done. Thanks.